Hi friends, so good to see you again. Happy Wednesday and welcome back to our independent station for guided reading. So, since it's Wednesday, we're going to be talking a little bit about vocabulary words. And these are our vocabulary words that we're doing during Wit and Wisdom. So this week, our vocabulary words are ocean life, food chains, and plants. Now, first, I want to think about why is it important to learn new vocabulary words? Every time that we learn a new vocabulary word, our brain gets smarter. We learn more about different concepts. Like this week, we're learning about things underwater. We're learning more about the world around us. And we're able to use bigger, fancier words with other people so they know how much we have up in our brain. Because you guys have a ton of knowledge in your brains. So, here's the deal. This week, we're learning these 3 words. I want to have a little bit of a discussion about them. And since this is your independent group, I'm going to have an activity for you at the end to show me that you have an understanding of what these words mean. So the first word is ocean life, and that one we can kind of put together. It tells you what we're talking about and where it lives. So right now we're talking about life or things that are alive. And where are they? What's this part of the word? In the ocean. So these are things that live underwater. What are some animals that live underwater? Can you say some out loud for me? Good. Sharks, squid, octopus, fish, coral. There are lots of plants and other animals that live underwater. Food chains are basically the way that we see how things are eaten and who they're eaten by. So just to describe a food chain to you, I'm going to describe to you what I had for lunch. So for lunch, I had a cheeseburger. So I ate the cheeseburger. The cheeseburger is actually made out of cow. Did you know that? That a hamburger comes from cow? And does anybody know what cows eat? Go ahead and say it out loud if you know what cows eat. Good, I heard some friends say grass. So I ate the hamburger. The hamburger was made out of cow, and the cow ate the grass. So that's my food chain. A food chain tells you who ate what. And the person at the beginning, at the end of the food chain, or the animal at the end of the food chain, is the thing that ate last, okay? Whatever is at the front usually has to start as a plant. Kind of like in what I just showed you, or told you about, the cow ate the grass, and the grass is a plant. So the food chain started with a plant, and then it has to end with either a person or an animal because they're the last thing to eat something else. The next one we have is plants. Now, plants is a pretty cool word because at first I was just thinking about like the plants that are outside, like flowers, and I know trees are plants, and even when you grow vegetables, those are plants too. But there's actually plants that live underwater, like seaweed or coral. So there are lots of different ocean life. And some of them are things like sharks, fish, it might be a squid. But other types of ocean life are the plants. Because plants do take in oxygen just like they do interact, with oxygen just like we do. And they also interact with carbon dioxide. So we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants take in that carbon dioxide and they let out that oxygen. So we actually have a really strong relationship with plants, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to hop back into our book, and if you remember, the last part of the story involved John getting scolded by his parents because he got a rash from eating too much candy, and they were about to take him to a doctor named Dr. Cranium. Dr. Cranium was a tall, thin man with a bald head and a gray mustache. He looked through his glasses at John and said, He eats a lot of candy, Mr. Midas said. He hasn't been eating his meals properly, Mrs. Midas said. That's just what I thought, Dr. Cranium said. I can tell by looking at him that he eats much too much candy. The doctor shone a little electric light into John's right ear. Then he shone it into John's left ear. Then he shone it into John's nose. He told John to open wide and say, "Ah." Then he shone the light into John's mouth. "Much too much candy. Gracious me, he seems to be full of candy." He told John to sit down and relax. Then he picked up a small rubber-headed hammer and gave John a light tap on the right knee, just below the joint. John's foot gave a weak kick. John giggled. "It's nothing to laugh about," Mr. Midas said. "No, John," the doctor reproved him. "A healthy little boy who didn't eat too much candy would kick harder than that." "I'm sorry," John said politely, "but I can kick harder if you want me to." He gave a sudden high kick, which knocked the hammer out of Dr. Cranium's hand. It landed on its rubber head and bounced across the room. "John!" exclaimed Mrs. Midas. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Cranium. John, tell the doctor you're sorry for kicking his hammer." "I'm sorry I kicked your hammer," John said. "I would recommend less candy," Dr. Cranium told Mr. and Mrs. Midas. "An upset stomach can lead to all sorts of complications." On the way home, Mrs. Midas tried to explain to John what she thought the doctor meant by complications. "You see," she said, "if you put too much of one kind of food in your stomach and not enough of the other kinds, it is bad for your whole body, because different parts of your body need different kinds of food. Do you understand?" "I think so," John said. "You've been eating so much sweet stuff," Mr. Midas added, "that there isn't room for eggs and meat and milk and bread and spinach and apples and fish and bananas and all the other things you're supposed to have to make you grow big and strong." "I like bananas," John said, "especially in thin slices covered with chocolate. Oh, they're called banana surprises." Mr. Midas looked at Mrs. Midas, and Mrs. Midas looked at Mr. Midas. They both shrugged their shoulders. Sometimes it was hard to make John understand things. At home, while Mrs. Midas was busy in the kitchen, Mr. Midas continued to reason with John. "You mean you'd rather eat candy than anything else? And chocolate rather than any other kind of candy?" Mr. Midas asked. "Yes," John assured him. "Oh, yes." "Don't you think there's such a thing as enough?" Mr. Midas persisted. "Don't you think that things are best in their places? I mean, don't you think there's a time for spaghetti and a time for roast beef and even a time for pickled herring and garlic toast as well as time for chocolate? Or would you rather have chocolate all the time?" "Chocolate all the time," John replied emphatically. "Chocolate's best, that's all. Other things are just food, but chocolate, ugh. I think I understand." Mr. Midas broke in sharply. "Very well." He took a deep breath and went on. "John," he said, "if you can't understand what sort of diet is really best for you, can't you at least get it into your head that you make your mother very unhappy when you eat so much candy that you can't eat anything else?" The conversation always seemed to get around to the effect of John's candy eating on John's mother. John couldn't see how it could possibly do her any harm if he ate candy. He sat silent for a moment, then he said, "May I go out and play, please, Daddy?" That's an interesting spot to end the story. And I wonder if the author wants us to think about maybe how John's candy eating could end up hurting or affecting his mom. Remember, this is a fantasy story, which means that some things might happen that could never happen in real life. So I want you to stop and make a prediction about what you think will happen if John keeps eating a ton of candy. So your job right now is to click in the description below or go to my schedule and click the link there for the reading survey. I want you to make a prediction or tell me what you think will happen to John's mother if John keeps eating so much chocolate. Okay, friends, that's your task. I'll see you soon.